So, so I'm just cracking
Don't
up.
worry, you can breathe too in between sentences. That's allowed. Welcome to Disability Clinic, where hold on, what was I gonna say? Welcome to Disability.
I gotta fix my hair. I gotta fix my hair. Okay.
Take your time. Take your time. Get a brush.
Okay,
Get whatever
my
you
hair's
need
okay.
to do.
Okay, I'm good.
Welcome to Disability Clinic, where if it's not accessible, it's not acceptable. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Van. I'm a Vietnamese woman with long dark hair, wearing a gray blazer and white blouse, sitting in front of a colorful bookshelf. Our special guest today is Zandy Wong. She's an undergraduate student studying public health at Johns Hopkins University, and she's also a Clinton Global Initiative University Scholar. She does a lot of wonderful work in the disability advocacy space, and I'm so excited to have her on. Welcome to the show, Zandy.
So excited to be here. I am a Chinese American woman with longish black hair. I'm wearing a puffy green shirt. I'm in front of a bed and a piano keyboard on that side. So yeah, that's my visual description. I am now a senior. Wow, that's exciting. I'm a senior now at Johns Hopkins University, where I study public health. I'm originally from Alexandria, Virginia, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. I'm most known for my work in disability advocacy, and I try to bring both the tangible data of research and stories to really influence policy. But I'm most known for creating the Next Gen Accessibility Initiative, where I help Gen Z youth learn about the importance of accessibility through free consultations with them and a lot of community workshops. And my work through that group has helped over 200,000 youth across 119 countries have access to accessible education. And so I find a lot of passion in using my own story as a person with hearing loss and the research that I do in the lab and in the community setting to really help create a world where accessibility is universal and having disability celebrated. There you go.
Woo! Nailed it. That is so impressive, all the work that you've already done so early in your career. Out of all the things you've done, is there anything in particular that you're like specifically very proud of?
Oh, I was really proud of last year. I was a congressional intern for U.S. Representative Katie Porter from California. I got to write federal legislation related to digital accessibility. So that was super cool. It didn't get passed, but I was like, oh, this is super cool. I mean, to have that much power to, put my words into action, which just really shows that no matter how old or young you are, you have a chance to make a difference.
If you want to share some of your lived experience with disability, like are there parts of your story that you commonly share with people?
Yeah. So I identify as a hard of hearing person. I was born without pretty much 90% of the hearing loss in my left ear. And for a long time, I couldn't hear the sound that most people take for granted, such as, the wind rustling behind my left ear or like the birds chirping. Nowadays, they bother me a lot, but that's okay. I wore hearing aids from the age of 6 to 12, and then I got a Baha implant, which is similar to a cochlear implant, but essentially uses the bones in the middle ear to get sounds from the ear canal to the auditory nerve, which is really neat. I remember when I was 12, I just remember hearing the birds chirp for the first time. Moments like those really inspire me to pursue disability advocacy work. I knew I wanted to help people with disabilities have that moment of awe. I call it like a watershed moment. And I wasn't really sure if that was in medicine or in accessibility at the time because I didn't really have many role models there, but I just kept trying and throwing stuff at the wall to see what works. So I came to Hopkins to really understand the science of my own hearing loss, and I ended up really falling in love with public health because it really was more people-centered, and it was actually a science of how we get technologies and science that we learn in the STEM field really present into other people's lives on a systemic level. And so that's really exciting to be the role model that I wish I had growing up.
I connected with Zandy because of a great talk she gave on digital accessibility. So I brought her on this ability clinic so she can share her top tips for digital accessibility. Do you want to just start with like how you kind of put this talk together and why it's so important?
I usually put my talk together by thinking about what I would need as a person with disability and what others would need with various other disabilities, because disability is such a wide spectrum. Some of them are invisible, some of them are visible. So this information that I'm presenting today is a lot from my own research and accessibility research I do on my own, and a lot of just trying to navigate the world with a disability, which is a little confusing sometimes. Accessibility, first off, is the ability to access information or spaces, regardless of ability. And in regards to my work, I do a lot of work in digital accessibility, which is the same thing, but more about can people with disabilities access websites, mobile apps, documents, flyers, PowerPoints. And there's this understanding that it's really only the responsibility of the disability community or the web developers or accessibility specialists to create a more accessible world. But hopefully in my talk today, you'll understand, one, why it's important for everyone to have accessible features in place, and two, that you don't need to know how to code or really know a lot about the disability community to really help make the world a more accessible place.
Fantastic. All right, let's go through your top tips.
Number 1, alt text and image description. So alt text is a textual description of what's going on in a picture. And this is important because it helps people with visual impairments or those who use screen readers hear a visual description of what's going on in the image. So essentially a screen reader goes on the image and it reads it out loud from the image so that they can hear it. So that's really important. I've included some do's and don'ts of alt text. Do be specific, succinct, and do include text that's part of the image. For example, there's those benches that says Baltimore's the greatest city in America, whatever it is. So you wouldn't just describe it as a bench. You would also put bench that says Baltimore is the greatest city of America. So that would be an example. The don'ts of alt text. Don't simply describe its terms, features, of the image or graphic. This brings us back to the earlier point of just include enough detail that you're able to paint a picture of it in your head. And don't use the name of the file. Sometimes people just upload a image to a website or image to a document, and it has the image 4032 JPEG. That's not helpful. That's not helpful at all, especially when you're reading it as a screen reader, because that's actually going to read it as one long word that would be nonsensical because it's not actually a word. So avoid using the phrase image of or graphic of. That's because if they're already clicking on it, they know it's an image or graphic of, so it's just extra space. And do not include external links in description. That's really helpful because sometimes people just put in the link that the picture came from, and that's not helpful. That's not giving us any description of what this image is trying to show us. So we have the golden retriever puppy sitting in a field. So a good alt text example is golden puppy sitting in a grassy green field with yellow flowers. So it's describing the foreground, which is the puppy, and the background, which is the grassy field with yellow flowers. And that's all you really need to do. A really good example is when NASA recently launched the James Webb Telescope, which produced new images of the world beyond there. They're really pretty, aren't they? But they included great image descriptions, as you can see here, that were really descriptive and didn't distract away from the picture. Oh, and also another thing, don't put jokes in your alt text. That's just silly. People actually use this to decipher and gain information from these images, so it's really important that you actually have alt text for it. So here are some methods for adding alt text on social media. When you upload an image to a social media post, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, usually in the image options. In Twitter, it will actually show up as a alt tag, and you can scroll over that tab to see what you wrote. And Instagram, it will appear only for screen readers, but you can also include some in the caption, and Facebook the same way as well. Any questions, Dr. Van?
No, I'll just comment that I love that big known companies like NASA are paying attention and providing great examples of how to do this well. Anyone who wants to be like a space nerd can enjoy, even if they can't see or access the visual image. They have a really nice, reliable alt text. So I think that's a fabulous example.
One thing I want to add about alt text is that Twitter, as of last year, has something that I really, really liked, where they have a alt text reminder. So when you try to post something, they remind you that, hey, you should post alt text. So that's really exciting. Number 2, color contrast. Color contrast is essentially how much contrast there is between different colors. And there's some pro tips for this. Don't use red-green to show contrast. Red-green is often used as a distinguisher between good and bad or evil. So good would be green and red would be bad or evil. So that doesn't always work because there's a lot of people, a lot of men with red-green color blindness. What red and green looks like to people who don't have color blindness is the far left image, the wild-type photoreceptors. For people that have red-green blindness, they can't really distinguish it. So it looks pretty much like the second and third image in that row. And then I have included an example in the top right corner of some, I think they're tomatoes or pumpkin. No, they're tomatoes. Tomatoes that appear in normal vision, but when you have a red-green color blindness or other types of color blindness, they appear different shades or their contrast may be muted. So red-green isn't always a good example to show contrast. Alternative contrast for that is using red-blue. Dark blue, light blue, whatever works for you, but don't use red-green.
I fell into this mistake myself because I have a slide on sort of preferred terminology versus biased terminology and like caring for people with disabilities. And I did the same thing where I had all the like say this words in green and all the don't say that in red. And my colleagues were like, actually, red, green color blindness. And I should have remembered. So I've changed it to like blue and orange, but it seems like blue and red would work fine as well.
Yeah. Either of those work. But yeah, definitely not red, green.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Another example is don't use red on black. So this is like red text on a black background. First off, it's just jarring to look at. Two, it's not accessible at all because there's not enough contrast between it, so it just kind of looks like it's fading into the page. And some alternatives are to use red and a white background or red and another color for graphics instead. And I think this also applies in my lab. I was trying to help them make sure the PowerPoints were accessible for research. And there were some graphs that had kind of like red spots on black spots, and it was just really hard to distinguish it. So even for non-textual things like graphs and pictures, well, actually pictures hard to control, but graphs you can definitely control what color you're using. Try not to use red on black, especially if there's some overlap between them, because we really want to be able to see the data. But I've also included a link to a contrast checker. Adobe Acrobat also has a really good one as well, but you can actually like pick the colors that you're planning to use for your graphic and see if it's accessible enough according to the standards that they have via WebAS. Number 3, camel case hashtags. In social media, a lot of people use hashtags to kind of link their social media posts to a category or gain attention for it, or they really engage in conversation, which is always really important. But these hashtags, when read by a screen reader, are often really inaccessible. Or those who have cognitive difficulties like ADHD, ADD, those kind of things, it can also be really inaccessible. So I've included some examples of how to make them accessible. Essentially, you want to use camel case hashtags, which means capitalizing the first letter of every word that's in the hashtag. So SciComm goes to SciComm with 2 capitalized letters, the S and the C, and Science Talks goes to Science Talks with the capital S and the T.
Yeah, I love that it's coined camel hashtags. It makes sense with like the visual bumps that you're going to see, and then just allows you to read it, or a screen reader to read it better.
Some people worry about if like you capitalize or make it an accessible hashtag, that it won't appear in the same algorithm or appear in a separate algorithm. It still appears in the same algorithm, so it's still going to get filtered into what category you want. Okay, are we good for next slide? I think we are.
Yeah, so I think we've gone through the first 3 tips. So number 4.
Number 4, emojis. Oh, I love this example. So this is about emojis. This is just general tips for emojis. Don't sandwich them in between words. So don't do sometimes I text people. I get so excited. I'm like, celebration face. Congrats. Celebration face. Don't do that. I only do that in text. But don't do that on a tweet, and don't do that in a document either, or in a PowerPoint. And don't put together too many at once. The example I have below is called a red flag trend. So I think this was last year or the end of 2021. They had this trend called the red flag trend, which was where someone put like a trouble statement and then put a bunch of red flags. This is actually a very small number of red flags. It used to be like red flags, like 8 red flags, a statement, and 8 red flags. But when you're reading that as a screen reader, it just goes red flag, red flag, red flag, keeps going. And then the word, then the message, then more red flags. So it gets really jarring really fast, and you try to understand the meaning of it, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's just really difficult for those with screen readers, or those, it's just visually very jarring to look at. So don't do that. Don't put together too many at once. Last tip is to don't use emojis as a replacement for text. Yeah, just don't do it. So don't try to replace, well, I guess this might work, like I'm happy and put like smiley face. That might work. But if you're trying to do a more complex example with like a really complex emoji, it just gets difficult to read very fast. Just don't do a whole emoji message in Twitter. That'd be kind of silly in general, but also very inaccessible.
I love your example that this is like a Cookie Monster tweet.
Yeah, I had a fun time finding this one, so I was very happy. I love Cookie Monster.
And it sounds like, because of the way a screen reader reads it, putting more than like 3 or 4 just seems a little, I don't know, extra and laborious. But it's just nice to have them at the end because you want to get the actual message through first.
Yes. I think our last tip, number 5, closed captioning. So closed captioning is what I actually use the most often because I'm a person with hearing loss. Closed captioning is essentially a transcription of an audio file of someone speaking, so you can follow along as they're speaking. So this is really important because it just allows better comprehension for me and other people with hearing loss. And I think a common example is that, people often have the volume turned down their phone when they're trying to scroll through social media. So captions are also really helpful when you don't really want to turn the volume up. So that's another example. I've included the methods of how to add closed captioning to social media clips. On Twitter, they're automatically captioned. Instagram, you can actually go into your account and turn on the auto captions. So when you're viewing other people's Instagram posts, you can see them. And then on stories for Instagram, you can use the Instagram sticker to edit the captions, and you can actually edit them and make them like different text and sort of stuff to make sure that they follow along correctly with what you're trying to convey in the story. In Facebook and TikTok, you can use the captions on the right side of the screen. And Facebook, for turning them on in general, you can they usually actually auto turn on for you, which is really nice. And a lot of the TV shows that I watch have auto captions on the bottom of their videos, which is really neat. But you can also turn them on in the settings. Closed captioning is one that's most helpful for me, but it also just helps everyone really comprehend what's going on in an audio clip or video.
Yeah, I just want to add that, like, auto captioning is really nice, but there's usually mistakes. And, you can really tell when someone just doesn't read through their captioning transcript at all before they do a post because, they'll just be typos. So it's one additional extra step, but it really improves accessibility and shows that you're truly dedicated to this type of access to just run through the transcript and make sure it's reading correctly with what the audio is. And I feel like it's been a good practice for me with my videos to avoid putting graphics or things at the bottom of the screen because that's where the captions typically are. So keeping that area clear just makes it easier for those who are reading the captions to not miss anything that might be hidden behind them. But I have watched lots of like TV shows and things that stream where the captions will like move all around. So
yeah, I think general guidelines to put it on the bottom, and that normally works for people the best. And also don't make sure that the color contrast isn't too crazy. I had to help someone whose captions were yellow on black, which was fine, but it was just a little jarring to read. So we edited this something a little bit more accessible, so that really helps. In these social media apps, you can also change the caption. So you don't have to just upload a file and hope it works. You can also go in and change the captioning as you go. Besides the tools that social media companies have and social media apps have to create closed captioning, there are also outside sources, free software that you can use to create transcripts. My favorite personally is Otter AI, where you can upload a audio clip or a video and get a pretty good transcription pretty quickly. And it uses AI to do that. And you can also go in and edit the transcription that Otter AI creates. And then I've also included Descript and YouTube. YouTube is actually a really big one because a lot of people, especially people like you, Dr. Van, upload their videos to YouTube. And YouTube you can either upload an RS file, which is a transcription file, or you can kind of type it along with the video to create a YouTube transcript. Or you can also have an auto transcript as well that you can also edit in. So that actually is really helpful. It takes a day or two, depending how long the video is, for the captions to appear. But it's just really important to have those captions that you can enable on the bottom right of your screen. So those are all free software, which is really, really awesome.
I would be really interested in checking out Otter AI because, yes, I do all the transcripts with YouTube, and the audio transcript function is very helpful. So it kind of gets me started, but I still go through, especially editing the timings, because sometimes, I forgive it, but sometimes YouTube misses like the timings, or they'll leave out sections or get the words wrong, so it's nice to just have something to start with and just mold it instead of having to do it from scratch. But interestingly, it bleeps out curse words, which is like, okay, I get that. But I was discussing with another guest, Crip Camp, that awesome movie that was nominated for an Oscar. And like YouTube didn't want to caption the word Crip because I guess, it considers it a slur, which is fine. But I wonder, as language and stigma changes and as the community kind of reclaims things that may have been negative in the past, I wonder if that will change too.
We'll see. I didn't actually know that it blurs out curse words. That's a little funny to me, actually. These tips can all be applied not only in the social media world, but into documents and flyers you create.
Yeah, and like educational spaces.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah. Very relevant. Wonderful. Let's run through the top 5 tips one more time in summary.
So the top 5 tips were: 1 was alt text, 2 was color contrast, 3 was camel case hashtags, 4 was emojis, and 5 was closed captioning. And these are all tips that you can try to implement into your own social media or your own documents as well.
Where can people kind of find you, follow your work and your journey? Are you on social media?
I am on social media. My Twitter is @zdogwong. My Instagram is just my name. Yeah, that's what I'm active on. Yeah.
Do you have any sort of like final thoughts or things that you want to conclude with?
Everyone has the power to create a more accessible world, and everyone can feel empowered just by taking small steps and experimenting to see what works for them and what can be helpful for people around them as they try to create accessible online spaces and places. And I think importantly, why digital accessibility and why I decided to work in that space? Because the world is going increasingly virtual. I understood this as a high school senior about to enter college during a pandemic. I went through online classes for about 2 years. Online classes and the online educational experience and online environments are not going away anytime soon. So it's important to ensure that these spaces are inclusive and don't leave anyone behind.
Thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing just the tip of the iceberg of your knowledge and your experience. Really, really appreciate you coming on. If you want to hear more conversations like this, hit that like button and subscribe to Disability Clinic for more accessible and entertaining educational content. To learn more about digital accessibility and more about Zandy, click the links in the description. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and learning. See you next time. What else should we say? It's okay to be a little over the top cheesy because it's like it shows like your energy, you know?
Yeah.
Let's do it one more time. Joining us today is our special guest, Zandy Wong, a Clinton Global I'll only demand this one more time. Sorry to put you through this. Consider subscribing and sorry. This is what happens when I'm unscripted. Number 1, alt text and image descriptions.
Number 1, alt text and image description.
You're hilarious.
You can do it. Come on, slide. You got it. If my Wi-Fi cuts out, it's because I live in a really old building. I'm on a hotspot right now, but we'll see if it lasts.
Okay. Number 2, color contrast.
Number 2, color contrast.
Number 3, camel case hashtags.
Number 3, camel case hashtags.
Number 4, emojis.
Number 4, emojis. Come on, you can do it, slides. All right.
I believe in you. Number 5, closed captioning.
Number 5, closed captioning.
Okay, excellent work. Sorry, I will not make you do that again.
Okay.